build your huts and ziggurats in ancient Assyria. But don't get attached to your huts, as you need to sacrifice 4 action points in Assyria.
And today we'll be teaching you how to play Assyria, the Second Edition, game designed by Emmanuel Onea, S.J. McDonald and Shem Phillips, and published by Garfield Games. And check out a link to the project page in the video description below.
And hi everyone, it's Stella.
And Taryn from Meeple University.
And hey, if you enjoyed this video after watching, like, subscribe and comments, you know what to do. Alright, now let's get to the classroom.
In Assyria, players are nomadic tribes attempting to thrive around the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in ancient Assyria. Over 6 rounds of play, players will expand their civilizations by placing and feeding huts, building on the fertile river to gain action points, and on dry land to build point-scoring huts, wells and ziggurats, all in the aim of gaining the most points. Twice per game, floods will wash away all of your buildings from the river, allowing you to start over and build again, causing a partial reset to the game. And over the 6 rounds and 2 floods, whoever can score the most points will be the winner. I won't step you through setup, but I'll introduce you to the components and show you how it looks when you're done. On the main board is the empty map of Assyria. This map has 3 types of hex spaces: the rivers, between the rivers, and outside the rivers. And you'll need to know these as there are some different rules for how each of them acts. Around the board are various tracks. The victory point track, players beginning with 10 points. The offering track and the influence track, players beginning with 0. And the turn order track, players beginning in a random order. Along the left side are 3 random civilization boards, as well as a draw deck of more, and each civilization has an on-board tribute track. To adjust the main board for a 3-player game, you'll block out 2 rows from the top or bottom of the board in any combination using non-player pieces, and use gold to block out the bottom step of each of the 3 tribute tracks. To play with 2 players, you'll block out a total of 4 rows and 2 steps on each tribute track. There are 2 shuffled decks of cards, food and Favour, with these their icons. In the top right, you'll find the round tracks. These green and brown tokens are expansion tokens. They have a range of numbers on them, and you'll shuffle them face down and pick 3 of each, setting the 4th aside unseen. Nearby, make supplies of ziggurat roofs, ships, food tokens, farmers and gold. And note that some of the food and ziggurat roofs get seeded onto the board in setup. Each player takes a player board filled with coloured pieces. These are 12 ziggurat pieces and 3 wells. You have 4 numbered action tiles, which are placed in their matching slots, and 2 ploughs, one face up, one face down. This track represents your camels. You start with none and track it using this marker, and camels will represent your action points throughout the game. You have a place for storing resources, and you begin with one of your coloured huts and a gold. Any of your remaining huts you do not own. You need to gain them before you can build them, and to avoid confusion, it can be good to keep these in a common supply. You're now ready to play. The steps of the game are tracked in the top right corner of the board. The first step, not shown here, is called the starting bid. It's technically still part of setup, but it involves some choices by the players. The game then plays in 6 rounds, tracked by these 6 expansion markers. Each round plays in these 5 steps. First, growth. You'll flip a token, and players will gain new huts to build this round. Second is bid. Players will make bids against each other for food, favours and turn order. Third is expansion. In the new turn order, players will build their huts, feed them, and gain victory points, action points and more for every hut they fed. Fourth is actions, where players will spend the action points they gained in expansion to take their actions, building ziggurats, paying tribute and more. Fifth is reset, where you'll reset the board for the new round. After the 3rd and the 6th rounds come the flood. This is intermediate scoring and a partial reset, as everything that any player has ever built on the rivers is destroyed, and the offering and influence tracks are scored and reset. After the second flood, players have one more chance to feed and score points from their huts, and the player with the highest score wins. Now we'll look at each phase in detail, beginning with the starting bid. And note, this has a lot of similarities with the turn order bid phase of a normal round. Begin by dealing out one column of food cards into this section of the main board. Each food card has a number between 1 and 4, and as you deal out cards, arrange them from lowest to highest, top to bottom down the column. If you draw cards with matching numbers, stack the new ones below the old ones. This process ensures that the weakest cards are at the top of the column and the strongest cards are at the bottom. Use only as many rows as the number of players plus 1. In the current turn order, players take turns to place a bid on a row. If you choose the topmost of the 3 spaces in a given row, this is free. If you choose one of the others, it will cost you either 1 or 3 victory points, which you must pay immediately. If you wish to bid on a row where another player has previously bid, you must choose a lower space, which will thereby have a greater victory point cost. Then before proceeding to the next player's choice, whoever was outbid must choose a different bid, either a new row or outbidding another player. This continues until all players have their own rows. Then go to the next player's turn and continue until everyone has a valid bid. Now to resolve the starting bid, players take turns from top to bottom to gain the food card from their row, move their marker back to the turn order track, choose one of their 4 ziggurat bases, and build it. It must go outside the rivers and must be placed so that there's at least 2 empty hexes between it and any previously placed ziggurats. Discard all remaining cards and you'll now proceed to the first round. The first step of a round is growth, and this step is administrative. Flip over the next expansion token. Each player takes this many of their huts from the general supply and places them here in their growth area rather than their personal supply. If you don't have enough huts in the general supply to meet the whole expansion token, you make up the difference by moving huts from your personal supply to your growth area, and if you're still short, skip any excess. Then fill out the card market. Like in the starting bid, deal food cards to the left column from lowest number to highest number, top to bottom, and do the same in the second column. Then in the third column, deal out favour cards. These do not have to be ordered, simply draw them top to bottom. The second step is bidding. Following exactly the same rules as the starting bid, players make bids on these rows, spending victory points until all players have their own row. Phase 3 is expansion. Each player takes one turn in the expansion phase in the new top to bottom turn order, resolving all 6 of these steps in sequence before play passes to the next player. When your turn begins, collect the cards from your row, always keeping them face up. Then build huts. You must build all of the huts from your growth area, and you may optionally build huts from your personal supply. To build a hut, place it in any hex, river or land which is adjacent to one of your ziggurats or one of your other huts, and which does not already contain a ziggurat or hut belonging to yourself or another player. If there are other pieces on the board, such as farmers, wells or ships, and we'll see how they get there later, these do not block the placement of huts. As you build your huts, it's important to remember that you're playing as a nomadic tribe. In many games, placing a hut may feel like it has a level of permanence, but that's not the case in Assyria. You'll find huts to be more tactical, and you can frequently add them or let them be destroyed as the game goes on. It's your ziggurats and other infrastructure like wells which will be on the board for the long term. The second step of expansion is to feed your huts. On each hex, there is one food resource shown on the right-hand side, and for a hut to survive, you must now pay that food. Here, for all 3 of my huts to survive, I'd need 2 fish and a grape. There are 3 main ways to spend food: food cards, your plough, and any wild food tokens you've collected. For example, here I could discard a fish, discard a food token as a fish, and flip over my face-up plough as grapes to feed all 3 huts. Alternatively, if I didn't have that food token, I could spend the 1 fish, flip the plough for the second fish, and then spend these 3 grapes for my 1 remaining grape, wasting the other 2. It's always optional to spend a food token or a plough, but you're not allowed to let a hut go hungry if you have a valid card which will feed it. So here, if I really wanted to keep my 2 fish huts, yes, I could spend this card and plough for the fish, but I cannot let my grape hut starve by holding this card back. I am forced to pay this card to pay the grapes. However, I might decide a more efficient approach would be to pay the plough as the grapes, spend this fish to feed one of the fish huts, and I could now let the second fish hut starve. Once you've made your choices for feeding, destroy any huts you fail to feed, returning them to the general supply. With everything that you've got left on the board, you now gain rewards, which are wells, camels, and victory points. And I'm going to pretend we successfully put down and fed a whole lot more huts to demonstrate this. First, you may build wells. If there are any of these well spaces which have 3 of your huts surrounding them, and you'll find these on any point outside the rivers where at least 2 of the spaces are on land, you may choose to take the leftmost well from your camel track and build it on the well point. This improves the capacity of your camel track and gives you an immediate reward of 2 camels. You may build multiple wells per turn if you surround multiple well points, but can build at most 3 wells per game. Next, gain camels. The rivers are fertile and you gain your camels from huts on the rivers. Gain 2 camels for each of your river huts and 1 camel for each of the 2 rivers where you have at least 1 hut. Here I'd gain 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 camels, adding them to my track. If you go over your maximum capacity, any excess camels are lost. Finally, gain victory points. And you gain them according to this table. 1 point for each layer of a ziggurat that you've built, 1 point for each hut outside the rivers, and 2 points for each hut between the rivers. Wells or structures on the river score nothing. Blue here would score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points, gaining them immediately. After doing all 6 steps, play goes to the next player in top to bottom order. Once all players are done with expansion, you'll move to actions. Each player will take 1 turn in the actions phase, again from top to bottom on the turn order track, moving their marker back to the main turn order track once they start their turn. On your turn, you may take as many actions as you wish to and can afford. Most actions require you to spend camels, and some have an additional cost. When you spend the camels, move down on the track, and you may carry camels over to the next round if you don't want to spend them all. There are 8 different actions with a camel cost. For 3 camels, you can restore your ploughs. Flip both plough tokens back over to their face-up sides, ready to be used again. If only 1 plough was face down, it still costs 3 camels to flip only that plough back. Be aware, if you ever resolve a different effect that restores ploughs, that would restore only 1 plough, not both. This action is the only way to flip them both at once. The next actions are to build or expand a ziggurat. A finished ziggurat will have 4 layers, 3 player-coloured layers and 1 neutral-coloured roof. To build a player-coloured piece, you must build from bottom to top within each column and pay the camel cost printed on the left and modified by the row that you're building. So, for example, building this piece would currently cost 4 camels. But each piece in the first and second rows reveals a camel discount. So right now building a bottom piece would cost 7 minus 1 is 6, while my next bottom piece would cost 5. My next middle piece would cost 3, while all top pieces will cost you 3, since there's no discount revealed under these tiles. When you build a new bottom piece, it must go on a land hex containing one of your huts, which is not adjacent to any player's well. Right now for blue, these spaces are blocked by river, and these spaces are blocked by wells, meaning this is the only legal hex. Place your new base and displace the hut on there back to the general supply. Unlike setup, there's no longer a distance restriction, and players can build adjacent ziggurats. To build a second layer, simply stack it on top of one of your existing first layers, and so on. You cannot skip a layer. Building a first or second layer piece has no immediate effect. However, each of these ziggurat columns is associated with one of the game's 4 actions. And as you clear those pieces, you make that action more powerful. When you clear a top piece, you gain a once-off immediate benefit. The 4th layer of a ziggurat works differently. This is called the roof, and roofs are available only in a common market. To begin the game, there's an off-board supply of roofs, and these don't take part until they enter play. There are 2 roofs placed on roof spaces at the civilizations, and there are 3 roofs placed on the offering track. The only roofs that can ever be built are the ones on the roof spaces of the civilization boards. Choose an available roof, pay its camel cost, which will be either 2 or 3, place that roof and gain the immediate reward in the brown bar to the left. Here it's drawing 2 favour cards and keeping 1. If there is no roof available on a civilization, then you cannot build a roof. When a player advances onto or past a roof space on the offering track, through actions that we'll see later, that player chooses an empty roof space on the civilizations and gains the immediate benefit they cover as a reward for making that roof available. If the market is full when this happens, then all roofs are returned to the supply before the player makes the choice and takes the reward. Finally, when building or expanding ziggurats, you cannot take multiple layers from the same column on the same turn, and you cannot add multiple layers to the same ziggurat on the same turn. Next, we'll talk about the 4 actions which are linked to your ziggurat tracks, and these are making offerings, gaining on-board resources, gaining cards, and gaining gold. In each case, when you take the action, you flip the tile face down, and you can't take the action again when it's down. You'll flip all the tiles back automatically at the end of your turn, and there are also some effects which let you do it during the turn. In each case, the action can be taken at a certain power based on how much of that column you've cleared. So if I took the gold action right now, I could only take it at the weakest 1-to-1 option. If I chose offerings, I could do it at the stronger 2-to-2 ratio or the weaker 1-to-1 ratio. In each case, these ratios represent the ratio of camels spent to rewards gained. The first of these actions is the offerings. You can spend 1 camel to make 1 offering, moving 1 step up the offering track. Or you could spend 2 camels to move 2 steps, or 3 camels to move 3 steps. Other than freeing up ziggurat roofs, the offering track tells you how much you'll score for wells and ziggurats during flood scoring. The second action lets you buy onboard resources, and this can either be to buy 1 hut or a farmer and a ship. The cost of this purchase will be 3 camels, 2 camels, or 1 camel, and anything you buy is placed here. Huts we've already seen. You can build one of these huts, optionally during the expansion phase, or as an action with no camel cost, following all the normal rules of building. You won't have to feed this until your next round's feed hut phase, but you also won't gain any points or resources for it until after that phase. You can build a ship also during the build huts step of an expansion turn, or as a free action for no camels during your action turn. Build the ship on any river space, whether occupied or unoccupied, and this now increases your adjacency. That is, when a player builds a hut, the hut must now go adjacent to their other hut, or their ziggurat, or through a path of ships adjacent to a hut or ziggurat. Ships do not belong to any player, so that means black could build this hut here using the ship that blue had placed. Ships play an important tactical role because they're the only way for a player to forcibly break through a blockade of structures that another player has built. Farmers offer flexibility in the feed phase. During the feed huts phase, you can place a farmer to cover the food icon on any single hex, making it wild. Now, for example, blue's feeding bill is 3 salt, 2 fish and a wild, efficiently payable with just these cards. Farmers are likewise communal, meaning they could be used by any player who later built a hut on that space, and they get displaced along with the hut when a ziggurat base is built. The third column lets you gain a visible card. Pay 1, 2 or 3 camels to pick one card from the unchosen row if there's one available. Do note this eyeball, which represents the visible cards only. By contrast, this immediate effect is to gain a face-down food card from the stack. The fourth column lets you gain gold. 1 camel for 1 gold, 2 camels for 2 gold, or 2 camels for 3 gold. Gold is of most use for the last camel action, paying tribute to one of the 3 civilizations. You can do this multiple times per turn with the same or different civilizations. Pay the printed camel cost, 3, 2, or 1. From your supply, place a gold on one of the gold-coloured influence spaces, or place a ship on the black influence space at the top. Then advance your influence marker the number of spaces you cover, which will always be the same as the camels you spent. If you land on top of another player's marker, stack yours on top. Whoever's on the bottom of a stack is considered ahead. If you're the first to reach one of these wild food tokens, collect it for future feeding. And if you pass one of these victory point icons, gain the points immediately. After gaining influence, you may optionally resolve the action printed at the top of that civilization's board once. Tribute tracks fill up over multiple rounds and once full, can't be used again. The other option you have is to play Favour cards. Each Favour card that you collect will show at its top which phases it can be played in for its text effect. For example, this is spent when feeding huts. These could be spent either when building huts or during your action phase, and this effect is valid only in the action phase. You can also choose to discard a Favour at any time to gain 1 camel. Once all action turns are done, you'll reset for the next round. Discard any cards that are left on the board, refresh any action tiles you spent, and rotate the civilizations, discarding the top one, that civilization has fallen, sliding the other 2 up, and adding a new one to the bottom of the column. Now, if there's not a flood, proceed to the next growth phase. After rounds 3 and 6, you'll resolve the flood. This includes a partial reset of the board and intermediate scoring. First, remove all pieces from river hexes. So that's huts, ships, and farmers, returning them to the general supply. Score the offering track. Based on your position, score the leftmost number of points for each of your wells. Here, blue would get 1 point per well for 2. And score the rightmost number of points for each of your ziggurat bases. That is, each ziggurat regardless of its height. Here it would be 2 points per ziggurat for 4 total. Reset all players' markers to the bottom of the track and refill with roofs. On the offering track, you'll score points based on who's leading, coming second, third and fourth. The leader scores points equal to the sum of the expansion tokens for the last 3 rounds and then discards the highest. Second scores for the remaining 2, again discarding the highest, and third scores for whatever is left. In the 2-player game, after the first player discards the top marker, check the distance between the players, and if it's equal or less than that marker, only then does second place score the remaining tokens. If the distance between the 2 exceeds that value, then second place would discard another token and score as if they were only in third. A player who does not advance always scores nothing. Then reset all players' markers to the bottom of the track, refill any bonus food tokens, clear off the tribute tracks, again leaving 1 or 2 in each column for player counts lower than 4, and proceed to the next growth phase. After you've scored the second flood, the game is over and you'll move to final scoring. There is one last feed huts phase and destroy huts phase, which works exactly as it does during a normal round. Any huts that survive score as normal, as do all of your ziggurat pieces. The player with the highest score wins, and if tied, highest in final turn order breaks the tie.
Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, maybe you'd like to watch this next one. Have a great day. Bye!